a
This
bad
conference will
weather
now be recorded.
pretty much over all of Tennessee and other parts, other states too. It's a nasty one. It looks like it. Hopefully it'll die down. That's typically what happens around here. I hope is it'll die down by the time it gets to us. But
we just can't handle no more rain. My brook behind the house is already almost at its banks.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to get the heavy stuff tonight. I'm going, yep, it's gonna be fun. Just get the kayak out.
Yeah. So I had a little meeting. We had a meeting between Thunder USA and Thunder China just to go over stuff, and I thought this was pretty neat. According to their data, and I'm probably going to show the wrong screen.
81 degrees here today.
As long as it's not the wrong screen.
Oh, I don't have any of those. Not on this computer. There we go. So North America did well over half of all sales globally.
That's insane,
isn't it?
Just think if you had like in-stock inventory too, right?
We're talking about that. They have 3 plants now. They're opening this year. They're moving offices, their main headquarters to a larger place. And they have 2 other places open. They're also talking about, I don't know if I should talk about this or not. They didn't say. At some point, they're looking at getting more warehouse space in Florida. And I know it's the long way around, but California is such a bottleneck. It may be prevalent to be able to have them coming in on each coast. So they're looking at that as well.
That's what we're saying now. It's a bottleneck. That's
our
use of words.
Our port's here are always empty because I live right by one. Well, Jacksonville, the main port, and it's hardly ever busy right now. It hasn't been for the past couple of years.
It's definitely the scenic route, from China. So, but it still may be faster than going to the West Coast. So
I could sit in the West Coast water for 45 days or take 20 days to make it to Florida.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Exactly. It's a little more cost prohibitive, having to go through and all that stuff. It costs a little more.
And all the extra fuel to make that trip too.
So they're talking about expanding. They gave us some numbers. I don't have the data on it yet, but they're looking at doubling production again and having stock so that we can be faster. And that's just going to really blow some things up. They're sticking with the same models for now. The Nova series, there have been some minor improvements, but it's largely been the same machine since the Mars series, as far as the way it's constructed, since 2018 or so. So, they just continuously improve on it. So they're adding a pressure monitor, I think. Don't quote me on this yet. But my Odin came with a pressure monitor, one of the digital pressure monitors like we have the mod for. And I believe they're going to start putting those on the Novas too in the future. I don't know exactly when that'll be implemented, but I believe that's on the table. So that'll be neat. We also have that firmware that I may have talked about before that we're looking at getting rid of min power. A lot of the controllers, I think Ruida is the only one that even has a minimum power, where you can adjust that, and it has that hard-coded rule about the 10 millimeter per second or less travel speed. So they're looking at the firmware and beta testing that stuff a little bit, or we will be, and hopefully that will eliminate a rabbit hole to have to jump down, because that's largely unused. As precise and as well as these things cut. There'll probably still be some sort of concession in there to do that. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be an option. Maybe it'll default everything to minimum power automatically. You know what I mean? Instead of having, I'm not sure exactly what they have in mind, but that's really the only thing going on the front. But that was a neat way. I wanted to meet the guys when we had the exhibition planned or whatever it was in Florida. I think Jason, you were going to go and help us even, and then COVID hit and all of that went away. That expo that they were going to have down there. And I was looking forward to meeting everybody, so that kind of fell through. So
they got that going on again in I think it's Atlanta, Georgia, and I think it's April, May. They're having the ISA, which is the one that you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
They just got to put it in Georgia this year.
They got a big one in Vegas. soon as well, which is the
Yeah.
International
I'll be
Awards and Personalization Expo.
I'll be up at the ISA, not as a vendor, but I'll be up there visiting, checking things out.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of those because I mean, literally, it can cost $20,000 or $30,000 to do that ISA one. It was going to cost us that much money,
Yep.
shipping
And there's
machines
no
over there and getting help and then messing with all that and having all the fixtures, and manning it. It's a huge undertaking,
Right.
and honestly, luckily, as good of a reputation and word of mouth that Thunder has, I'm sure it would be effective. I'm sure it would generate some leads. But hey, we're doing good the way we're going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's
And you
definitely
can't
good
keep
for
up on
exposure.
production. How many extra leads do you need?
Well, that's the thing. But we do need a little more presence because we're pretty much virtual. If you think about it, and I realize, the need to have a physical presence out there and that kind of thing. So that's something that we're looking at in the horizon as well. So.
Mhm.
I just got an update for some weather a minute ago. Father-in-law's heading home for Columbus. They've got 2 interstates shut down because of the rain, because the interstates are flooding across. He said
Oh,
he
boy.
can't even see to drive, and it's heading our way. He said, "How's the brook?" And I'm like, 3/4 of the way up. I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, we're flooded.
It's cold down here though today.
Is it?
I think we're sitting at like 82.
I was gonna say, what are you sitting at 80?
Yeah, right.
It's got a little chill to the air today.
Yeah, we're in the 50s, thank God. Oh, by the way, Jason, thanks.
Huh?
I got it.
Huh? Oh, yeah, no problem.
Okay.
We're talking to code again.
There you go, talking in code. That got Grant in trouble that one time. So, but, but yeah, like I say, if anybody's not been here before, sometimes we just kind of fill the space. So if anybody has anything, kick your mic on and jump right in. Don't be scared to interrupt us. So.
Yeah, I see some names that you never hear talking. Jeff, Sean, Robbie, Mr. M.
Anybody want to go off projects or anything?
I wanted to put something out about the rotaries. I guess
Okay.
now's as good a time as any. The thing I was showing you before about being able to use the Junior and the Rotoboss and the Nova 24. We're gonna try to roll that out in April. Is when we're gonna try to get that going officially. So the low roller will be going away. The Junior's getting a facelift to make it a little bit more low roller ish. To make it a little bit more versatile. So all that'll be coming out around April.
I haven't checked any more on that Odin, but I do know that the tower is like right there on that thing at when it's lowered all the way down. So that's something that we need to look at. And then the honeycomb's non-removable. So we don't have any leeway there, short of yanking the entire bed out and stacking it up on blocks.
For the Odin, well, I mean, the picture that you showed me, your wheel was sticking up quite a bit, higher than normal. It should be almost touching that plate. So very little gap there. But on the flip side of that, the workaround for that would be to spin the rotary around, and then 2 wires on the motor would just need to be swapped.
Well, you can flip it in Lightburn, I think, can't you? No, that just mirrors the artwork. That doesn't flip the motor direction. Yeah, you're right.
Well, no. Well, the new Lightburn does, but the old doesn't.
Gotcha.
The current retail version doesn't. The beta does.
Yeah.
But yeah. So if the Odin is an issue with the tower hitting like that, then what we can do is we can just flip it 180, and then there's 2 wires on the motor that get swapped, and that'll reverse the direction, and you'll be fine.
Get that tower out of the way. Get it on the right hand side, and
well, the towers will be in the front.
Yeah.
Instead of in the back.
In the back.
Where you're having the issue, right?
Well, where have you put the head?
Where's it home? Back left or back?
Yeah,
right?
at home's back left. It's the same. It's the same origin as the Novus. So yeah, rear left is where it homes. So having them in the front will be better, so they don't accidentally hit them on the way back there if they go to home. So yeah, that's right.
Well, what's the vertical distance in there? from the head to the bed.
I'll have to go look.
Because if it's the Junior, you won't have to worry about head clearance because the tower and stuff's not on that side anyways. The only part you'd have a problem with is if the
Oh,
tower
that's
would
right. I had the
hit the
full one
gantry.
sitting in there. I need to put a Junior in there. That's right. I did. I had the full roto in there, didn't I?
But is the tower in jeopardy of hitting the head, or is it in jeopardy of hitting the gantry?
The stylus, the plunger.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it could hit the head. So, yeah.
Yeah, if it's a Junior, you won't have to worry about that because there's nothing on the left-hand side.
Okay.
That would
I'll check
hit.
it with the Junior, and I'll send you some more pictures and some actual measurements and stuff so that you'll be on the same page.
But if the Rotoboss does fit, like I said, the solution to that would just be flip it around and swap those wires, and then it'll work just fine.
Gotcha. Okay. So.
But yeah, so the Nova 24 will have the Junior and the Rotoboss capabilities, and sometime in April.
Do you ever see going away from the Junior and just going full roto across the board?
No. Because, I mean, the whole point behind the Junior to begin with was to give a cheaper alternative. And, so people weren't spending $1,300 on a big one like the Rotoboss. So that was the whole point.
Well, there's cheaper alternatives out there.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, the Junior does well. Like I said, I'm doing a redesign of it a little. Well, not a redesign, but it's kind of
improvements
to make it a little bit more versatile. And if people wanted to upgrade, like always, everything will swap right over.
Yeah.
You don't need any special stuff or anything. All your parts and pieces will swap right over to the new plates.
Yeah. Well, I've still got that acrylic one. Did I ever send that to you, one of those to you to rebuild? I remember I was going to. Okay. Well, since I have so many lasers, I might ought to have a couple extra rotaries running. So I'll send that to you also I'll send it with your foot or the power cord, the connector for that fan. I know you don't need it, but I got to make it right anyway. And I might as well toss it in the box.
Yeah.
That way I can take it off my to-do list.
You could always be like Travis and have 20 different rotaries.
What are you going to do?
Well, if he uses them, that's good.
I use most of them.
I got all this stuff around here, and I can only use it one at a time, and I don't even do that. So
I got a bunch of them, but they're all the same.
Yeah.
As I say, probably nobody's got more than Jason's guide.
They're also going to push that Odin 32 pretty hard, and from what little I've run it already, it is a spectacular machine. It could replace the Nova, my Nova 3580. It has as much power and much kick as that DC 80 watt tube. The only thing is the air delivery, since it has it's got a, well, I'll call it a copper brake line, like ULS and Epilogue, where they just have it coming in from the side. It's prettier than that. It's machined aluminum and it's built on the head, but it delivers the air at a 45-degree angle from the side instead of through a conical nozzle. So the lens is, open at the bottom. Yeah.
That's an open lens concept on that?
It's very similar to the Trotec or the Epilogue heads, the new ones with the, interchangeable lens assemblies.
Yeah, the little cartridges you slide in and out.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, and I really like it. Would I cut 1/2 inch with it? Maybe not, without getting the air directly down somehow, so I can actually, because if it's blowing in that kerf at a 45-degree angle, it can't be super effective.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I guess it depends on how much air you throw at it. So in a way, but it'll be coming in at a goofy angle. I like the conical nozzle for cutting. That would be the only benefit I see to having a Nova 3580 over an Odin. But I did some videos. The speed is insane, and for the the inertia is so low for the amount of speed that we've got. The scanning offsets are relatively low, as in comparison to the Novas. So I think it will be faster. So, but they're neat. We're going to push those a lot. I wish they'd stick a 50-watt fiber source in there too, and do a dual head, dual beam, kind of like the Fusion. But I think with the Fusion, you got to swap optics, because the fiber optics are totally different than the CO2 optics.
They use two different heads, I believe.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Because one laser fires out. Well, one laser fires one way, and the other laser fires the other, and they both go to separate head, or separate heads, I believe.
Yeah,
And
that's
they part.
exactly the way I was envisioning that to work. And it would be easy to stick a 50-watt fiber, underneath that Nova or underneath that Odin. And
Yeah.
man, that would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Oh, geez.
Be able to do metals on it too. I mean, it's a gantry, so it won't be fast like a fiber, but I mean, hey, if we get calls all the time, I want to do metal and it's kind of like the TV VCR combo. If you get one of those because you need both, if the TV goes out, your VCR is no good, and vice versa. If you're really going to use it, at a production level or really put it through the paces, I'd recommend separate units. If one goes down, the other one doesn't. You can run 2 jobs at the same time. But for maker spaces or libraries or anybody that's a hobbyist or even in production that wants to do a wide range of materials and do organics, composites, and metals, it's a superior option. So
Yeah, it's like those
Yeah, I've
hammers.
never.
It's like the planer joiner combinations. Like if you motor goes out, you're screwed on both versus having 2 separate tools.
Yeah.
yeah, so it's all in what you
I've
want. But I
never.
know
I've
that
never
fusion
used.
is popular,
I've
with the
never
dual
used a
source,
gantry one before. I don't know what that would be even like. Have you?
just like running CO2.
Well,
I mean,
so
as
the.
far as yeah, the beam, the motion planning and the beam steering and all that stuff would all be identical to how you would do a
Oh,
CO2. The only difference is you have to use different optics. That's the only reason there's 2 different beam paths,
yeah.
is because a Z and SE lens won't affect fiber. I bet it'd burn it up. You'd engrave it, and the other way around. So even the mirrors are different. See, if you could find a mirror or if you could find optics that were good at both of those wavelengths, which they're so far apart, I don't think you ever could.
Oh, yeah. They're
It'd be
miles
neat to
apart.
have a unified optic for those, and that would really streamline it all. So you don't have to worry about alignment and all that stuff. If you wanted to use both sources, you'd have to make sure that they're both aligned to each other, not only to themselves.
Yep.
But
Yeah. The wavelengths on those are so far apart. It's not even funny.
mhm.
You're talking one's like hundreds, and the other
And if
one's
if
10,600 or
if
something like
UV
that.
sources will really do everything that a fiber and a CO2 will do together, I can see one day gantry and galvo just being UV. But I'm
Yeah.
sure there's probably some stuff that they won't do either.
Yeah, but UV
There's
is not
always
as
some.
quick and powerful, really.
It will be. It can be. It's pretty
Well,
expensive right now.
It's a lot more
yeah.
expensive, so for the same price, you don't get the power. But
Right. And that'll come down because at first those fiber galvos you can pick up for $2,000 now used to be $8,000.
Yeah.
Like CD players, anything else, it'll come down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's one I've been doing a lot of research on the UVs and looking even a 5-watt UV galvo for engraving. You can hit metals, you can do wood, you can do plastic, you can do leather phenomenally. I mean, it's really good at plastics and very finite things like where you would consider using like a CO2 galvo for engraving, right? You're not going to go do deep engraving or 3D or cutting woods, but or acrylic and stuff like that. But engraving it is nice because it's obviously it's fast and it's got a very fine or spot size as well.
Yeah. Have they even put a UV in a gantry yet? I don't know that
Yeah.
I've seen one. Have they?
There's people that make home built. If you go
Yeah.
to
Oh
I
yeah,
think it's
Laser Builders Guild and all that. Yeah.
yeah, laser engraving everything or something like that on Facebook. There's
Mhm.
several people that build their own gantry systems
Yep.
and everything for the UV. I mean, I don't know how you do the planning, like the motion planning on that and stuff.
But if it's a gantry, you just use a Ruida.
Yeah, you buy a Ruida controller.
And that would still, yeah, but
Yeah.
the speed of it would have to be so low. I mean,
Well, it may not, because in the same reason that if you took out a 20-watt fiber source and put it on a gantry instead of a galvo, it would probably, it dwells longer just because it's a whole lot slower. So that effectively means you got a whole lot more power out of it, at the end of the day, where the rubber meets the road on a gantry system than you do a fiber galvo. You don't have all those little mirrors flying around. Yeah, if you go
I'm still
4,000 millimeters
amazed.
per second, you're not going to get it. But if you're going, see, you could take a 20-watt fiber gantry and run it at 5 millimeters per second if you wanted to. You cut through whatever. So
Like here with the Aurora, I just did this today. I posted a video on it, but the slate coasters. I mean, it
mhm.
just. I mean, obviously the more power would be a lot quicker because I think this thing took about 30 seconds, and it's like a 2.5, almost 3-inch circle.
Yeah.
Took about 30 seconds on a 20 watt. So I mean, on a 50, you're probably looking at 10 to 15 seconds to do the same thing. Because that was 1,000 millimeters a second, 100% power, and I think 20 or 30 megahertz.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it just
I need to
amazes
play
me
with
how those mirrors can move around that fast. I mean, the mirrors are tiny, and the
Yeah.
fact that they can move around that fast to create stuff like that just amazes me.
Well, because they don't have to move very far
Yeah.
to make
that's
a big difference down below.
Yeah.
Well, that's
And
true, but I
they
mean,
weigh. I don't even know what they weigh, but they can't be
Nothing.
anything.
yeah, but
Yeah.
still, to have, I don't even know what controls them. Is there like a miniature
It's like a little
motor or something up
servo.
there?
3D. It's a 3D galvanometer. It's similar to what you see on like a gimbal on a drone's camera.
Right.
Kind of
Oh,
same idea. And you look at those,
okay.
how fast they can move.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other thing too is it's based on the size of your head. So if you look at CO2 galvo, because the source on your CO2 supply on those DC tubes, the beam size coming out of it is a lot bigger than your fiber or your UV. And for you to get the small spot size that you're looking for engraving, and there was a couple of vendors went with I believe it was the 10 millimeter heads, and they actually needed to go to a 20 millimeter head, or else you can't get any detail in it. But once you do that and look at doing the upgrade from a 10 to a 20, right? Next thing you know, your power supply is not got enough current in the output. Your motors aren't sized large enough. So there's a couple of suppliers that didn't get that right the first time. So when you go engraving a CO2 galvo and you realize like, wow, it looks like crap. It's always burning. It's not because it's because you can't ever get it in focus because your focus lens, right, can't ever get the spot size down enough. Whereas if you look on like your standard gantry system, it's a little bit different because of the motion planning and the distance, right? You're focusing very close to the lens, where on your galvo style, you have to have a beam combiner or a beam expander, we'll say, that actually helps narrow when it comes into the lenses, right? Those OPEX lenses or whatever brand you buy. But
Well, big thing too is with the fiber, if you don't have good smoke extraction or whatever, that will affect the beam tremendously as well. Which kind of sucks. I mean, with the CO2, I don't think you really have that problem at all. But with the
I think you
fiber,
do. I think
do
you
you?
do.
I've
Well,
never.
think about how the cutting enhances or the air assist, especially the external enhances the air, the cut. I
Yeah.
don't think it keeps the kerf clean, because the way I look at it is that beam is invisible and it can see things or get blocked by things that I might not be able to see. So when you drive in the fog with your headlights, they're not as effective. I can imagine if you don't have good smoke assist or evacuation of that stuff as it's being burnt, it's like looking into a fog, so it makes it less, it's reflecting and deflecting off of all of the particulate matter inside. At least
so,
that's
so
my
when
take on it.
I've never
yeah,
noticed it on the CO2, but on the fiber, I mean,
Yeah, I don't know if
just
you'll notice it on CO2, because on CO2 you just go, oh crap, it didn't cut through. I'm going to crank it up 10 more percent or 20 and just go with it.
Right.
maybe so, but I just know I know with the fiber, it's a lot more
It's
noticeable.
more sensitive, more temperamental. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
yep.
that does occur in any beam of light.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a spectrum of light. So anything, right? Whether it's visible, so you've got UV, you got visible, and then you got what's the other one?
Infrared.
Higher end infrared. Yeah, the higher end. Yeah, so you've got UV is the low end, right? It's less than your visible spectrum. We've got our visible spectrum, and then you have infrared, which is fiber and CO2. But it's all a wavelength of light. And if you take your light source that they use for like actually testing fiber optic cables and stuff, and it can measure the transmission of light, anything will affect that. So that, smoke affects it, right? Fog affects it. Dirtiness on the conductor affects it. So on the fiber optic conductor. And they'll do that in safety systems. So I work in the marine industry, and shipboard egress lights, right? The emergency lights are designed to where they have a certain output at a certain light, and then they test them on how they look in smoke-filled compartments, right? You don't want to be able to, drown out the emergency egress route to get to lifeboats on ships. So that the emergency lights on ships are designed very specifically. If there was a fire and we're evacuating the ship, that you can, you don't just effectively enhance the smoke.
Right. Do those where do those go? Are they mounted high or low or what? The
emergency
lighting.
lights. So it all depends. So they have, we'll say, like your standard, lay-in ceiling lights and stuff like that. They get replaced. Everyone's putting on their glasses, and then they have
Travis
they have
completely ignored me.
what they call like battle
Sorry,
lanterns that are
I had
like
my screen covered up. You making fun of me there, Jim?
cute.
Jim looks like the old guy from Duck Dynasty.
The reason I asked was because I believe in Japan they put all the exit signs. This is from when I was in the fire service, on the ground, on the floor. In the USA, all the exit signs are up high. Well, all the smoke goes high, and they teach you from a young age to crawl along the floor.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's why I was asking that question.
That's a good point.
Travis, no, we're not making fun of.
Yeah, you are. It's all right.
You got your fiber going or something?
Yeah, it's sitting right next to me going.
Yeah.
That's the only
Have
way
you,
you get the suntan in Alaska.
Right?
played with the rotary table in Lightburn yet, Travis?
Not yet. Right now I'm having problems with my fiber.
Well,
So it's not wanting to fire at all.
hate it when that happens.
Operator error.
Yeah, if you look at Travis's right arm versus his left arm, his right arm's got a nice tan to it.
What, Jim?
So, yeah, if you look at your right arm versus your right arm's got a nice tan to it, and the left arm's.
Pretty much.
It's not from driving.
I'll tell you what. I've got.
It's not from the sunlight.
I've actually got a topic. If we don't have any questions.
Yeah.
Everybody
I have a topic. Yeah.
Holy cow.
So we've had a few of these pop up about the Opto Isolator. And what these do, these go on the power supply. And it optically isolates these inputs and outputs on this 6-pin connector so that if the high voltage power supply shorts down or something, it will try to arrest that 30,000 volts from feeding back into the controller and blowing it out and things like that. But what can happen is these things can fail, and you might have seen this on Facebook. So if you ever see it, there's a couple of things it could be, but this is one of the first things to check is when you get random fires, when you're doing an engraving, even if it's a vector fill, it's not a raster, and you get random fire marks. There was a couple of people that had posted that on Facebook, and this is what it is. The Opto Isolator fried on it. So you can hotwire it temporarily until we can get you another one and run without it. You don't have that protection. Now, granted, 99% of the lasers out there probably don't even have this, so you could consider it like an appendix. You can take it out and still be okay. But if there is something like that goes wrong, we like to make sure that we get you another one. But that's something that I wanted to, and that's the most common way that it's going to look. That's before, and then this is after you hot wire it. So all you need is a little jumper or a paper clip to be able to facilitate that modification to test. So yeah. The other thing that it could be is tube ground. And tube ground, we've had a few of these too, if I can find it. There we go. If any of the circuit right here, if any of this circuit has, there's multiple connections. There's a high voltage connection here, and then usually somewhere on this ground there'll be a terminal block, near the power supply, and maybe one near the tube, so that you can unscrew these terminals and more easily facilitate the replacement of those parts. And they'll look something like this possibly. And if any of these terminals are loose, that can cause noise and high resistance connections and things like this to happen. So you may see some thermal insult or whatnot, but that's a good thing to check also if you're getting abnormal output or erratic output. This can also arc against the frame and cause your rotary to turn the wrong direction. It can, what else have we seen? Chris, have you seen any other weird anomalies from that thing? The laser would fire when it's not supposed to. It changes the scale sometimes. I mean, it does some really wonky stuff.
Weird.
Yeah, I mean, the craziest one for tube arcing was the rotary skipping. But
Yeah.
that's not enough to see. No firing. The other thing that probably gets missed sometimes is on the Opto Isolator. It's actually got 6 pins that go into that 6-pin connector.
Right.
You got to where one of the pins is loose, and you just tighten down the screw, and everything goes back to normal.
Yeah, that is something that we see. The connection right here between these two, these screw terminals sometimes are a little loose, and the board can wiggle in there. And even if it doesn't wiggle, even one of those being loose could cause a problem. So it's always a good idea to tighten down your connections. And keep in mind, this one is the AC, 110 volt AC power to the supply. The bigger wires, the 3-pin connector. So don't go jamming your screwdriver down on those holes with it on. Be sure you de-energize the machine. Lock out, tag out.
That's no fun.
Verifies the energy.
So, yeah.
Natural
Cool.
selection.
Well, it could be that too.
Oh, the worst one I ever had is when I was installing someone's outdoor unit, their AC unit, and it had everything. We hardly ever use lockout tagouts, and had the breaker shut off and everything. And I'm out there wiring it, and the next thing I know is I'm on my butt. My hands are hurting. I'm like, what the hell just hit me? Well, what I didn't know is their supposed dedicated unit to the AC unit also went to their stove, and the wife was trying to cook, and so she went out there to flip the breaker.
Ah.
Nice.
Just as I was putting the wires in. Yeah,
They had the 50 amp split off to the AC and the
full blown hit my butt on 220.
Yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
Oh, Travis, you
Yeah.
came in a little late. Let me pull this graphic up for you real quick. And it's like I said, Chris saw this too. But I was kind of impressed by this. This made me really happy. Let me pull it back up. That is the total global sales, and we accounted for more than half of it
Nice.
for last year. Isn't that cool?
Yep.
So over 1,500 units. And 2 years ago, we were moving 150.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's pretty
Oh, yeah.
nuts. So, but yeah, like I said, I'll reiterate, if anybody has any laser questions, please, I'll be glad to field them for you. Don't be shy.
Sam, we know you got one.
As a matter of fact, Jim, you read my mind. I was just getting ready to unmute. Well, Brian,
Please mute
you
back.
actually answered it. Okay.
Oh, it's really loud.
He just came on blaring.
He came on hot.
Yeah, go
What you
ahead,
got?
Sam. But yeah, you were
Oh,
really
there you
loud.
I have a loud voice. I do apologize. I'll put my microphone up towards my forehead. How's that? Oh, I see Brian adjusting his volume too.
Way better.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm a truck driver, so I'm in the truck, but I'm not driving right now. Anyways, Brian, you answered it via email, but maybe I'm not explaining it right. On a couple of the videos, when the laser head is traveling across the artwork, left to right and then right to left, I don't know if, like, right at the point where it turns on, there's like a overshoot or whatever, and when you see the traversing lines or whatever, in some of the videos they actually show like a little red to the left and a little red to the right, where it's like giving the laser head time to warm up to speed or whatever. And do they do that? Is that something that the Thunder does, or no, not so much?
If you're talking about the buffer zones on either side, they are there. So so basically the head has to travel usually beyond the artwork. The faster you go, the farther it has to travel so that it can slow down and turn around and make direction changes. And that's all built into the motion planning. The other factor that's in that is your backlash from the belt, because it'll stretch differently in one direction than it does the other. And that's where the scanning offsets come together. So those are kind of intermingled. But I mean, is that what you're asking? Or
I don't specifically know what I'm asking, but I know that on the one Lightburn video, the guy talks about it, and he's got a graphic up there, and the graphic is called test, I think. Let's just say for argument that the graphic is a total of 1 inch wide. And what it does is obviously the black is the laser is on and the red is the laser is off. Well, from the T to the E, you see a little red. Well, then he hits this button, and what it does is it adds, like, I'll say a 16th of an inch to the left of the first T, and then a 16th of an inch. Yeah, there you go. That's the word I'm looking for. Overscan. Okay.
That's for G-code machines. No,
that's diode laser. That's not yours.
Yeah.
The Ruida doesn't do that. It doesn't need that.
The Ruida does that automatically, and you don't have to choose it. All of it's built into the motion planning. There is no choice.
So what you got to remember, Sam, on Lightburn supports multiple controllers, right? So you may see a video where someone says you can increase your time or get faster results by turning the white space travel up. That's G code as well, right? You get people asking, it's several different features and functions, just like the test button built into Lightburn. That's for G code machines, right? You don't have that for the Ruida. So they're, the videos are not, we'll say necessarily specific to each laser as much as it is the features that are in the software, but some of them are specific to the controllers they support or that are supported by them.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's my question.
Awesome. Yeah, I get it, because I was having a little trouble wrapping my head around that, but it makes sense now. But that the Ruida controller does do that by default. That's built into the motion planning as far as adding that buffer zone, and figuring all that stuff out. And I think Chris was working on some actual measurements to trying to put that on paper at some point to try to get a finite amount of buffer zone on each side or something. Were you checking into that or something? I think I remember you mentioned it. He may be on something right now.
Well, I also wanted to give you a pat on the back, Brian, because I no more than got done hitting send on the message, and within like 30 seconds, a minute, you already had me an answer back. So thanks a lot. I appreciate you getting on it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So we do our best. We try not to let anybody slip through.
So I think you're talking about extend space. Yeah. So I mean, based off your stock Nova settings, at 1,000 millimeters per second, you've got about 2 1/4 inches of extend space on either side. And let's see. When you take it all the way back down to say like 250, you get 0.155 inches of extend space.
I bet we could draw that out. I bet we could put a piece of text out there, a box, and draw it out and have a line across it, and you adjust a slider for the speed, and it'll automatically show you. You might already have all that in a spreadsheet to do the napkin math on it.
Yeah. So what the machine is calculating and what regular kinematics say don't line up exactly, but it's close. Of course, there's some sort of S-curve percent value that the machine's using that I'm not privy to. But basically, you just know general rule, right? 2 1/4 is going to be your max, and then the slower you go, the smaller that extend space is. which saves you a lot of time, right? Not having to waste travel, for small objects,
Yeah, that's where
Right.
speed is not always faster.
right?
And for anybody that wants to go down the rabbit hole of the Ruida controllers, there is an EduTech wiki for Ruida controllers, and it's pretty in depth. It talks about all the protocols. It has everything you need to know in there about it, basically, from a theoretical standpoint, which I don't know what all that means. That it may differ, like he said, but there's all kinds of neat stuff in there about it. And they even have a link to Thunder Laser at the bottom. Isn't that cool? I just noticed that.
Huh.
Yeah,
That's
I got a
cool.
call the other day. It happens quite a bit. Somebody will download the Thunder version of RD Works, and they'll call and be like, "Hey, I got a HL3010 machine, or this or that or the other." And this one IT guy was mad. He was like, "Look, we need your help. We need somebody to, get this laser connected, and it's your, whatever." And he sent the serial number, asked for it, and it was some eBay laser. And they just
Oh,
used the
man.
Thunder. They just used
So
the
you
Thunder
just-
software. So
So
who do
then
you call? You call
laugh and hang
Thunder.
up.
Yeah. No, I helped him, but yeah.
Did you tell him he should have bought a Thunder than a cheap China version?
No, because I used to buy cheap China versions. That's how I started. Well, I had ULS first.
Oh, I
but
forgot. You're not in the sales department anymore.
no.
Yeah, he's
Well,
allowed to say whatever he wants now.
even when I was in the sales department, I wasn't in the sales department. I'll put it that way. I'm not a salesman, but I did my best.
Well, then I guess that also brings me to another question, if you don't mind,
That
Brian.
explains the difference
man.
in sales from 2 years ago.
So if the Nova will go up to a travel speed of 1,000 millimeters a second,
Mhm.
what's everybody's take on that? I mean, does everybody crank it up to 1,000 and then lower the
Never.
power, or
No.
put it in the middle and raise the power? I mean,
Well-
obviously there's a balancing act and stuff.
Well, the balancing act is just
That's-
because our machines can go 1,000 millimeters per second, or probably about 1,200. It'll probably do that too. Doesn't mean that it's best to. It depends on what you're doing. If you're trying to do a dot per dot engrave, if you're trying to do, a high resolution photo or something like that, if you get much over 3, 4, 500, at least your dots start to become dashes, and you just blow all the detail out of your work. So you got to think about it this way. There's a little invisible beam of light that's bouncing around off of 3 mirrors and a lens, and that thing's traveling back and forth, yanking all over the place at 1,000 millimeters per second, theoretically. And there's delay. There's all sorts of optical things that happen while that's going on. Beam drag and all kinds of weird stuff. So it's kind of like a Corvette. It might do 180 miles an hour, but most of the time you're going to drive at 55. You know what I mean?
What I was getting ready to say,
Okay,
how
right.
fast does your semi go,
That's what
Sam?
we're just
How I
talking
drive.
about. Where speed is not always faster. You got to,
Right,
depending on what
okay.
you're doing, you got to find that happy medium between what you're doing and what you
Yeah.
want to achieve.
Right. If you do a 1 inch or like a 4-inch wide, piece of letters, just some text, and you go at 1,000 millimeters per second, it's like he said, 2.5 inches on either side. You may be quite a bit faster by slowing down to, 400, 500 millimeters per second, because you've you have way less buffer area or extend space that needs to be accounted into it at that point.
Yeah, I don't think
Good
I ever run above
No.
500.
A good
Ever.
keep in
example
mind-
would be, did you ever
And
watch Days of Thunder? And how they always talk about faster is not always
Yeah.
better to get
Yeah.
lap times.
Yeah,
You have more
tires. Conserve your
yeah.
tires.
You have more control actually going slower to get faster lap times than you do wide out.
Now, the one reason that the Thunder is preferred a lot is because most of those lasers out there only go 500 millimeters per second. And where this is good is if you need to score some paper or you're doing something thin, you can turn up the speed to attenuate the power, to mitigate that power especially on the higher power machines. The 100 and 130 watt ones are sometimes a little rowdy to try to dial them down doing delicate work. So that way you use the speed to compensate for that. And that's really where it shines, when you're going up those higher speeds, is to attenuate and mitigate that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the other thing you have to think about too is the size of what you're doing, right? So that 4-inch by 4-inch example Brian gave, right? You got to understand the acceleration and deceleration. You may never actually get anywhere near 1,000 millimeters per second because you don't have enough. You've got to start from 0, accelerate to 1,000, and decelerate
Right.
before the end.
Well,
You may not have enough runway to get there. So what you end up doing, right, is to Jason's point, is if you set it at 500, right, you're not accelerating and decelerating as much. You truly hit the speed. You have a lot more control on how much you overshoot, so the overall lap time is shorter.
Yeah,
And
and
that's the
also
same when
keeping
you're doing lines as well. And if you're
yeah,
doing
and keep in mind the 1,000 millimeters per second. We're usually talking about doing a raster engraving. It's the X-wing, because in a vector, like he said, if you're trying to cut 1-inch circles, you're probably not going to go over 30 or 40 millimeters per second. Trying to navigate that kind of stuff. So it's different with vectors than it is engraving. So keep that in mind. The maximum vector, I think, on the spec is 500 millimeters per second is what we max out in the specifications. But if you ever hit that, you'll probably be lucky, unless you have a Nova 63 and you're drawing a straight line.
Yeah. I was doing some cutting on my 63 130, and I mean I got it up to about 65, but it blows the corners out so bad. Like when it tries to make a turn, it just blows them out. Because I mean it just can't slow down quick enough to make it. So it looks horrible. But I mean
Well,
about 25 to 30 I found is a pretty good sweet spot for it. Where it cuts
and
it nice
Jason,
and clean and fast.
if you're seeing that cutting in the corners at faster, what I found is tweak your min power down by like 5% and keep the same speed and see if it still cuts through. And depending on your speed, you tweak your min power so when it's coming into the corners, it won't blow it out, but it'll still cut
No,
it.
it keeps the corners, the power's there. The power's not the problem. It's the fact that the head doesn't slow down enough, and it makes that immediate turn. Or if you're doing like a slightly radiused corner at the end of a straight line, sometimes blow it out, and it'll make like a
I
jagged.
think that might still be that power deal, though, because these are these motors have encoders on them. They'll fight to stay in the position they want to be at. And
I know,
that
but if
just
you go a little when it goes, I'll get a picture or something and send it to you and show you. But where it goes to the edge and there's like a rounded 90 or something, that
So
rounded 90 is not rounded. it's
it's
very
weird because the
like stutter.
controller is supposed to take that into account. That's the whole
Yeah.
purpose of that motion planning. So maybe you need to do a default reset on your controller.
well,
I can try that.
there's an option in your line layer where you can do a start firing, so you can fire for 10 seconds at a set power. Just fire over a piece of scrap material for 10 seconds at that power. Watch the hole that it makes. It's not going to give you a pretty line. It's going to burn through more than what the laser beam width is. It's amazing what it does in like plywoods and stuff. So what you're experiencing is a very, very slow turn around that corner, and you're just putting a ton of wattage in that region. Right? I mean, we're using heat, and there might be some wiggling, but it should motion plan, slow down, turn around, make a left, and keep on going.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I'll get a picture and show you, or even a
There's a
video.
combination of both, because I know what you're talking about, Jason, but I've not seen that.
It's more pronounced on some of the other lasers, like the cheaper lasers, where you almost get like a misstep in the stepper.
Well, that's exactly what it can be. Yeah, because there's no feedback. Yeah.
If you're going too fast, like say doing a circle, I've done a circle at like 300, 400, 500 millimeters a second just playing with it, and Thunder is the only one that will actually maintain it the best. All the other ones tend to do like a jagged. It's like a jagged circle, or the circle it skips at some point, and that circle won't close because the stepper missed a step or overstepped or something like that.
Yeah.
But
And
I've noticed on Thunder it does more. It doesn't. It'll still close the circle, but it's kind of like a wavy almost. Like it's going so fast, it's trying to maintain where it's supposed to be, but it's kind of like a wavy circle.
That could be belt shake. Now, on the 63s, you should have the blue and gray drivers in there instead of the solid blue ones. All the other machines, or is that on the 51? They might be in the 51 and the 63.
I'd have to look.
But
I
they
don't know.
changed motors and drivers, what, last year or the year
Did they?
before? Because we
What?
had a lot of calls, especially on the 63s, on those longer gantries.
I remember when that happened.
Wavy lines.
Yep.
I've got wavy lines, and they just kept on and on and on and on. And they figured out that at a certain speed, and they've defined the range, that was the same resonant frequency as the gantry, and it was causing the belts to shake and stuff like that, and it was causing part of that. So they tried different motors and different drivers until they got one that wouldn't resonate at that frequency. And they also played with changing the gear ratios and things like that on the y-axis. But
I know. My 63 is brand new, so I'll take a look at it and see, and I'll get some video and show you.
Yeah, it should have the LS motors. I think it's the LS motors, and then the blue and gray driver instead of those HBS 57s.
Okay.
You'll know the difference. The old drivers, well, they're not old. The ones that all the other machines use are solid blue. They're anodized, and the other ones have some plastic on them, and they're like gray and blue, or gray and silver, or whatever.
I'll take a look tomorrow, and I'll shoot a video.
Yeah, you'll have the new one. Yeah, you should have the new motors. But yeah, send me a little info on it if you want to, and we'll see if we can make. I just want to make sure there's nothing going on with it.
I mean that's to me that's severely overkill. I mean, so to say that it's a problem, I'm not saying it's a problem.
Sure.
It's just it's severe. That's severely overkill as far as trying to drive your system that fast for something like that.
I hate
So
this.
it's like it's don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's a problem. That's not what I'm saying at all.
But see, look, there I go talking about we need to talk about laser stuff, and here I go doing the same thing. Who has the weirdest? Oh no, never mind. We won't
Here's
do
my
that
weirdest thing.
Oh, that's one of those. Oh, can I say what that is?
Yeah, that's the hanger.
That's
the hanger for the 24, so you can run the Junior or the Rotoboss on it now.
Nice.
What
were you trying to show us, Travis? Did you get your fiber going? Is that what you're after?
Yeah. By the way, anyone who gets into fibers, they're finicky. I was 1 millimeter out of focus, and it wouldn't engrave because of it.
You have to close your eyes to focus. Listen for the noise.
Well, if you get the Aurora, you don't have to. It autofocuses.
Yeah, it's autofocus. But although, if you'll play with that while it's working, you can still dial it in just by ear.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But it's got the Panasonic sensor in it, though. It's got that high dollar good autofocus sensor in it.
If you would put a Raycus power supply in it, or a Raycus laser supply, I'd get it.
Well, why don't you just get one and stick a Raycus in it?
JPT. Might have a Raycus. You want a JPT.
Yeah, sorry, JPT.
Yeah. No, the one thing I do hate, I wouldn't say hate, but I dislike about the Aurora is, and I brought it up to you, was the autofocus. The autofocus is off center completely from the head. It's not centered on the X or the Y. It's like adjacent
where the sensor
is, right? Well, it's an autofocus, not a positioning tool.
Well, no, but I know, but
oh, you wish it would autofocus wherever it was when you had it sitting there.
Well, if you're say you're doing a coin like Travis has got, like this coaster, right?
Yeah.
This coaster, I had to physically move this over to the
sensor and then move it back under the laser.
Oh, shucks. Well,
no, my point is too is for rotary stuff. That's where it's going to be really critical, because
or if you're jigging
with the rotary stuff, you have to. Obviously, it's not going to hit in the center on the top of a cup or whatever you're doing. So that becomes an issue with the autofocus. But if it was in line on the X axis, then it would line right up. You can still do it and it'd be fine.
Yeah, on the Pro versions, it probably won't matter because it's got a it's controlled. The Z-axis is actually controlled by the controller. On your model, I think the Z-axis has it's a separate autofocus circuit, so it doesn't interact. You can't get full Z-axis control on the one you got.
No, it's not for
you don't have the
control.
Okay.
No, so I've got the autofocus where you hit the button.
It's separate. Yeah, and that's the one I've got, and I can see how that can be a thing, because if you're used to using autofocus, how do you not autofocus? There's no guide, there's no gauge, there's no DRO, there's no instruction, and I see that, and that's a good point. But that's a good point. Of course,
I'm looking at it more from the rotary, because
from
a
the
lot of
rotary
people are going to want
perspective,
to, whether either a rotary roller or chuck or whatever the case may be.
well, that'll
it's
be
going to
easy.
be fixed.
Just measure, or just manually focus. We don't autofocus using the rotary in the Novas. Why would we do it in the Aurora? I mean, well, I know, but as far as workflows go and what people are used to, I don't think it's a big deal to a lot of people that aren't rotary manufacturers thinking about it, that it would be a big deal, because typically, wouldn't you teach them not to use that anyway if it's going to be a little bit of a pain?
Yes, but on a CO2, you can easily slide a wedge in there, drop the head down on it, you're done. There's no measuring, there's no second guessing, it's done.
So we
Whereas
can make
on the fiber, you'd have to have a gauge that's, I think it's probably 100 and some millimeters or whatever is the focus. I think 160 something millimeters. Yeah, so you'd have to have something like that. But even still, if you brought it off,
it may not be ideal. Now you got to also remember they're buying these heads from somebody that makes them, so they don't have much control over where the autofocus goes. But that is a valid point.
I love the autofocus. Don't get me wrong. It's not that. It's just if it was in a better position for more practical use than adjacent and offset from the head completely.
Right.
I mean, if it was lined up on one axis or the other, that would be fine. But it's completely off of the axes.
Yeah, it's just where it is. Yeah. No, I get it. That's something we can check out. But what time is it? Oh man, look, we made it within 3 minutes, and I didn't have one of those awkward silence moments.
I am surprised though that it's a lot more open on the sides than what you would imagine from the pictures and the videos that are out there. You got a lot more throughput on the sides than what I was.
Yeah, you could lay a rifle in there or something. Yeah. It fully enclosed. It can be a little restrictive, but not as much as I thought either. When I opened it up. But
yeah.
Are you using? You said you were using a fan that was already in place.
Well, I've got a central.
Oh, that's right. You got that big
exhaust system, so I tie into that with that little 3-inch hose.
Yeah.
Cool. Look at Glenn down there.
Huh?
He got so small.
Yeah, I know.
It's the angle of his camera.
It's a security camera. That's what it is.
Yeah, I like that. So I like that big plotter back there too. Hey, is that latex? Is that a latex plotter, or is that just a wide format?
Looks like
yes,
that's what his wife does. Is a latex, right?
Oh boy. Something else I don't need, but I want.
What, a wife?
I need a UV system. That's what I want.
No, wow. I got one of those.
Sorry, you left yourself wide open for that.
I did. I'm
Can you hear me? No.
Yeah, we can now.
We can now.
Oh, you can hear? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry about that. It's been a long time since I got on here. I check every time I'm
it's been a while.
Busy. Sorry. I've been missing some good stuff, it seems like.
Well, busy is good. Well, I still have to get the last few on there. I'm working on that still. Oh, let me make that before I go, because it's like 1 minute. Some of you might have heard we are going to switch support ticket systems. To most people, it doesn't matter, because to just about everybody, our support looks like an email address, and they get emails back and forth. But the system is going to change. But it'll still kind of work the same way. You send an email, we help you. But there may be, I'm going to do it. That's one thing we need to figure out. We're going to have a little round table about that on when to implement it, and that, it'll probably happen in the wee hours of the morning, Friday night or something like that. So by Monday morning, all the new DNS stuff will populate, but the email won't ever go down. We won't ever not have service continuity. It just may be in the middle of a transitional period on the systems. So, and I'll make some announcements and post it and things like that, just to give everybody a heads up. I don't want to pull the fire alarm because it's not really a huge deal, but I do want to make everybody aware. So, but that's all I got.
Hell, I
Are
didn't
y'all
realize
gonna?
what time it was.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to jump off of here.
Shit.
It's a little late. Um, are you gonna? Since I don't have that other thing officially in place yet,
Yeah, the views expressed in the next part of the meeting are not Thunder's. There's your disclosure.
this is
And
where
honestly, Brian, what we're going to end up doing is over the next month, I'm going to start transitioning over to a separate platform for doing the after hours, just so it's completely separate from Thunder. Because we're on the after hours, we're going to start inviting other brand of laser users into the after hours.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
Yeah, we did. I actually did do it. We did talk about it. So I forgot. I didn't know if you was bringing that up or not, Travis.
You got
Yeah.
mouth in your pocket?
Yeah, Jim and I talked about it, and we're. I've just got to find a good platform that I like that can support a lot of users relatively easy. I might honestly end up using GoToMeeting. I don't know yet. But yeah, we'll end up doing the after hours a little bit different.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. I swear I'll try to join one.
Yeah. Hey, what are the chances of getting a JPT power source in the Aurora?
I mean,
it's not that hard, really.
If the footprint's is kind of the same and all of that stuff, physically, it may not. I don't know how that goes, but I mean, you mean calling them and going, "Hey, will you make me one with this source in it?" I don't know.
Yeah, and if you wanted to check on that, because ideally that's what I'd like is a 50-watt JPT on the Aurora chassis.
Yeah. Oh, I got to tell you this other thing. Let me, and then I'll stop the record. Sorry. Also,
70-watt M7.
On all of our RF tubes, we're moving to coherent tubes, the US made, the ones that Epilog was using. So all of the Odins and all of the RF powered special order Novas, if there are any, at some point this year and forward, they've struck a deal with coherent. And that'll also make it easy to have them recharged here in the States. If they send us an SPT tube or something like that, some of these guys like Bell Labs or whatever that place is, or Evergreen or some of those other refiller places, refurb places for the RF tubes, they may not touch it if they don't know it, but they know coherent and they know Synrad and, all the, yeah. So I think that's a huge plus.
At that point, is there going to be any difference really between the Thunder and the Epilog?
Yeah. Proprietary systems, $1,000 motherboards.
About $40,000 a cost.
Now they are true servo, and we were talking about the extend space before. There's virtually none. That Epilog, you jog all your material upper left, right up against the corner, and you don't typically do that in a Nova because of that. Or is one reason. So, the full true servos and that design is a little bit better, and you still get higher speeds, around 3,500 millimeters per second or something like that.
Yeah, but it's not practical to run it at that.
Yeah, it is on those because you don't have any overscan. Yeah.
Oh, it's like literally start and stop. There's no.
Yeah.
There. I mean, it might be. There's like millimeters, not inches.
So the full servos do offer a little bit of added. Is it worth the extra 40 grand? No.
I don't think so either.
So, especially since we're going with a US tube, that's huge news. I loved it when they said that was the highlight of that whole thing almost for me.
The thing is, though, Brian, when you look at it, right, is that's not the only thing that's their price difference, right? Thunder could put out, a machine equivalent spec for half the difference in the price, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
A lot of other things that drive their cost higher that maybe the value's not there, right?
Sure.
Or maybe it's perceived value by others.
I've got to see this Monday. I went out and I saw an Epilog Fusion Pro, and was not impressed really.
Not for the price, right? They're great machines, but they're not worth 3 times as much.
I mean, it's just.
And you'll hear Russ, and he's tested them all, Russ Sadler, and he will tell you that he thinks a DC excited tube will do a better picture than an RF tube. And the test that he's done, the same way that a DC tube, if you run too fast, you're going to make dashes out of your dots, the RF tube can fire so fast trying to handle it the other direction, you get 2 pulses instead of 1. And it can actually do the same thing. So the technology behind it, it really boils down to life. If you think about it, you can pretty much use an optic to get a beam to do just about anything you want it to do. And it boils down, and if you think about it, dollar for year or whatever the time period is, do you spend $5,000 on a tube and replace it every 7 years, or do you spend $650 or $700 on a tube and replace it every couple of years? It's going to come out as a wash anyway, so there, the epilogue, there's a stigma behind those machines, and they're not bad machines. They're good machines. They've been developing that same platform for a long time. ULS, Epilogue, Trotec, all those guys, but they're not like everybody thinks they are.
People that have them
Right.
claim that